I would request the President to deliver his presidential address. Sir, please.
Thank you so much. There are two great advantages of giving the presidential address. One, the judges are not present. There are no questions to be asked at the end of it because you're all supposed to believe that what I'm going to give you is very profound wisdom. And believe you me, if it's not very profound, it'll still be profound. You see, the part of any debate is that it is a proposition which can be argued both ways. If a debate cannot be argued both ways, it cannot be a debate. And therefore, first of all, I'd like to congratulate Himanshu Dhulia for having chosen a subject on which both sides could have argued. So, thank you to you, sir. You know, this year we got the parliamentarians to debate here. In fact, 6 parliamentarians had to come to Wow, but because of Maharashtra elections, all of them have backed out because it is very clear that elections and winning elections is far more important than an academic debate. But the debate was that should foreign policy be idealistic or realistic? Now, the point is that you can argue it both ways. If you have a debate like, that women should be honored, I mean, who can say that women should not be honored? If you say that you must love your country, you must love your country. So some subjects are amenable to debate. And some of the subjects that I've enjoyed debating on are, for example, English is also an Indian language. So you can argue for, you can argue against. But having said that, let's come back to the subject today. The good thing is about today's debate that I find that you have read very extensively. So from Rachel Carson, who had written the book Silent Spring, which in fact is the foundation of environmental movement and environmental laws in the country. And remember that when she wrote that book, she was accused of being a spinster. Can we imagine how much the world has changed? In 1962, she was told that you have no right to speak because you're not married and you don't have children. So what's your stake in the environment? So first of all, let us say that much has changed in these 7 decades. A lot has changed. A lot has changed in these 6 decades when at least that question is not being asked. Greta is not being asked questions about why she is raising this. This has become a concern. That's a very important thing. You have all made a mention of some very important Supreme Court cases. I am very glad that your reading is very extensive, from the MC Mehta case to the Bhopal tragedy to the case in Kerala. It's all very good. I'll just like to mention one other seminal text that you might like to go through, which is a text which was the first time when the US Supreme Court discussed the point. It's called, Do Trees Have a Standing? Which means that does a tree have a legal standing? Does a tree have a right to exist? So that was the first case, which is in fact the precursor to the Ganga case, which is a precursor to the Brasilia case, which is a precursor that other than the human beings, everybody else has a standing. And that is a very important dimension of law. It's a very important dimension of law. The second thing that we got to understand is that, you see, in our scenario, the distinction between living, non-living plants and animals, which was a very clear divide, till J.C. Bose, one of our scientists, said that this cannot be divided so very clearly. There is a continuity, and in that continuity, you have to understand how life evolves, how things move, how things happen. The third point which I'd like to share with you is that many problems can be resolved by technology. And many problems cannot be resolved by our thumping our chest. You cannot solve certain problems. For example, if BS4, BS5 norms had not been brought in for transport, you couldn't do anything about it. So the answer to a lot of our problems, is technology. Because the fact is that we will continue to consume more. And although Sir had said that, population is a major factor, and the fact is that over the world at large, there are several countries where the total fertility rate is now less than 2.1, which is the normal replacement rate. You have situations in Korea, in Japan, several parts of the world where the TFR is going down. In fact, if you look at it in a very interesting way, as countries evolve, the TFR goes down. Sweden, for example, Japan, for example, Korea, for example, they don't know what to do because people, perhaps that's the evolutionary nature. Closer home, when you look at India, you find that the TFR in the Parsi community has gone down completely. There are now less than 65,000 Parsis left in the country after the death of the great Ratan Tata. This fact came to our knowledge that at a point of time when Bombay could have its own Parsi Gymkhana, when you had General Manik Shaw, Mr. Rustamji, Mr. Varaiwala, and so many people who were holding leading positions in the courts, leading positions in the bureaucracy, leading positions in the army. Now there are hardly any Parsis there. The TFR among Sikhs is now 1.3, 1.4. So that again is, so that is another aspect of it. So the solutions to many of our issues are, one, the institutional mechanisms that exist. And when it comes to institutional mechanism, you find that the National Green Tribunal is doing many things which normally high courts and Supreme Courts would not be able to do, because today the NGT comprises not just judicial officers. The NGT also comprises people who have competence to talk about the environment. People like Mr. Gildial, for example. Mr. Gildial is a classic example of how the law and technical expertise work together. Because the Supreme Court cannot just say that, all right, protect the environment, protect the environment. Who on behalf of the Supreme Court will come to protect the environment? So the Supreme Court looks for people like Mr. Gildial, who have put in adequate numbers of years in the Forest Service, who have played an active role on the ground, and therefore the Supreme Court says, all right, we'll make a monitoring committee, but the monitoring committee will comprise people who are stakeholders and who are important and significant stakeholders. We've been fighting over water. I come from West Bengal, that's my state, and West Bengal and Tista rivers, there's a constant fight between Bangladesh and India about how do you use water. Now, the fact is that many times we have not really looked into how much water is required. We have assumed that X amount of water is required. However, if you look at drip irrigation, if you look at micro irrigation, if you look at many of the things, we are actually wasting water. We are actually wasting water. We are using much more water than we require. So the solution is not whether India is right or whether Bangladesh is right. The issue is whether you require so much water or you don't require so much water, and that is an aspect which must come out. Many examples were given about, about the faith of people, about our convictions, about our sentiments and various other things. And yet we must realize that at the end of it, there must be an economic proposition which should be able to resolve problems. For example, I come from Punjab, and it is very easy to say that why do farmers do stubble burning? Because they have no other option. And what do you do? And this is something which will confront all of us. As long as it is only theoretical that, do this, do that, it's fine. But if you're supposed to pay for something that is good, I like the environment, I'm willing to pay 10 rupees for that environment, everybody will say. If I say that, all right, are you all willing to put 100 rupees for the environment, you'll say yes. If I say, are you willing to put 1,000 rupees for the environment, you'll say, students हैं, कहाँ है हमारे पास 1,000 रुपया? आप दीजिए, आप बड़े लोग हैं. All right, Mr. Dhulia and I and the Chandola ji's and Mrs. Nautiyal will say, okay, Commander Negi will say, pension ठीक ठाक है, we'll give 10,000 rupees. But if it comes to 1 lakh rupees, they'll say, nahi, aadhi pension chali jayegi, we can't give that money. So there is always a correlation between our ability to pay, and then the larger question comes up, if it is a public good, who should pay? Now, my proposition here is that if there is a technology which can address stubble burning, if there is a technology which can address stubble burning, and this is going to benefit whom? It's going to benefit the entire population of Delhi. Is going to entire the population of Punjab, is going to benefit the population of Haryana. So why can't the governments of Punjab and Haryana and Delhi come together to pay for those technologies, to pay for those baling machines, which will ensure that the bales are done, that the baling can be done, and we can save both the environment and we can save farmers' interests. You see, law and society, they both have to go hand in hand. In fact, one of the things which I felt in this debate was that you didn't argue your points as forcefully as I thought you would have. Because in a debate you can't say that this is also right and that is also right. In a debate, you have to be single-minded focused, even when you know that what you are saying may not be, there is a difference between what you feel. And in a debate, it's not supposed to what you feel. Both sides will have a point of view, but as a debater, essentially as a debater, you must have one point of view and you must carry that point of through. You must carry it through. I mean, that is the whole point of debating. That is why in some debates you also have a turncoat round, where you argue for and then you argue against. The whole purpose of a debate is apart from getting a lot of knowledge, apart from getting a lot of information, is also to hone your argumentative skills. And as budding lawyers, you have to hone your argumentative skills, because half the time you would know that what you are arguing for is not right. Because you will have to argue for your client. You may agree with your client, you may not agree with your client, you may have an ethical point of view, whatever it is, but there will be people who will argue for Coca-Cola. There will be people who will argue for dams. There will be people who are arguing both sides, and it is every person's right to be represented. It is every person's right to be done. And when you play the role of a judge, then comes the real thing, where you have to weigh and examine arguments from both sides, and then you have to come to a considered decision. And when you come to considered decisions, as you've seen in some of the recent judgments, you've seen the recent judgment on the Aligarh Muslim University case, a very finely contested argument. You've seen the argument of in this larger bench, about the right to property, where I'm very glad that my very dear friend Justice Sudhanshu Dhulia gave a view in which he said that, look, you cannot completely ignore Justice Iyer. I mean, Justice Krishna Iyer had made a very valid point. And so, while it is true that the majority will prevail, it is not important what will prevails. What is very important is also to see the ratio of the argument. When you see Hidayatullah's case, in that Privy Purse case, you find that he has argued both sides. He, as a good lawyer, he's argued that why this should happen, why that should happen, and then he comes to a conclusion. That is exactly what we look forward to seeing from you. You're all budding lawyers, you're all budding judges, you're all budding practitioners of law. So I wish you the very best, and I'm sure you will do very well.